Well, we are learning Leah Bas Avram and Avimori Moshe Ben Chaim. We are learning for a Refuah Shlema for Alidachana Din Bas Dina Riela Herschel Mendel Chaim Mitchev Leah Bas Freire No Avram Ben Mindel Ruth Batzara Yesach Ben Dvora Dino Mindel An Ben Gittel Amir Mishona Dina Ben Dvora Mai Batzara Chaim David Master Alvin and Moshe Ben Sarah Bashav Baruch Chaibas Sarah Nachman Ben Herschel Tzili Rina Batzatel Michael and Zipporah Avram Shimon Ben Sarah Leah Ben Juliet Harriet Bat Lily and Binyam Ben Sarah Yoshua Ben Bluma Chavavas Dina Claris Bat Etu Honis and Meir Ben Carmen Rosa, who's doing Baruch Hashem much better. I got a report today. Eliezer Gittel Ben Malka Moishe Tzvi Ben Rivka Chana Ariel Rus Bas Brach It Ari Ben Yetta, and of course Karen Shatan Elbat Gola Rachel David Ben Sophia Lin Bas Leah Maya Bas Sarah. We're in the laws of charity. Very important mitzvah. I just want to recap something. I'm not sure if I mentioned at the end of the last class. So we said everybody's obliged to give tzedakah. And we also discussed that how great the mitzvah is. And we explained that the money that we have is just really a picadon. It's like it's entrusted to us to do with the right thing. Let's go for number 2. Kol adam chayav liten tzedakah, chapter 34. Whatever he can afford. I need somebody who themselves receives support from charity. They themselves also have an obligation to give kagon. For example, sheyesh lo mat mamon shelo. He has a small amount of his own money that he doesn't use for commerce. Let's say like savings. The mutar lo litol min tzedakah. It is permissible for him to accept funds from charity. Right? He has a little bit. He has a little bit of savings. For a rainy day, as we say, but his checking account is empty. This person can take funds from tzedakah, kevan she'ein lo keren kedei lisparnes min hareva, because he has no. This means he has no principle that he can get profit from, which can sustain him, but the Shulchan Aruch in Yoredea goes in much more detail about this, but if you have money in a savings account today, it's not going to produce, unless you have an awful lot, it's not going to produce enough to live on. And if you have some money invested, I suppose if they have a lot of money, but we're talking about a person who's just got, they've got some money tucked away, God forbid, for a terrible thing. And so it's not like they have zero money, but they have no money to live off of. This person can take tzedakah. Another interesting thing, to remember is that when we go, the only thing that accompanies us into the next world is our tzedakah, right? I don't know if I remember if I said that yesterday. Okay, mikol makam. Nonetheless, this person who is an ani, who is poor, kevan sheish lo b'meh litparnes, since he does have the means to sustain himself, chayav liten tzedakah mimashen nitloy. He gives tzedakah from that which is given to him. Because he has those other funds he has that rainy day fund. So if he gets money from tzedakah, he also has to give tzedakah. Even if he only gives a little bit amount, al yimna etz atzmo, he shouldn't refrain from giving, ki hama'at mishalo, because that person's small amount, chashuv k'mo harbe min asher, it's like a wealthy person giving a lot of money. Our sages of blessed memory explained in the Gemara in Menachos. Excuse me. And if you want to look it up, it's on page 110, Aleph. V'nemar boilam behema, boilas behema. When we talk about the olah offering, okay, which is a behema, it's an animal, right? Ishei reach nichoyach. It says about that olah offering that it is the fire offering, which is a satisfying aroma, a pleasant aroma for Hashem. Of course, as an aside, right? Not that Hashem enjoys like we enjoy. Well, we have to understand what satisfying aroma to Hashem means, right? Not like we pass a barbecue and we say, oh, wow, that's geschmack, that smells really good. That's not the kind of satisfaction, because Hashem is not corporeal, doesn't have the need to want to, Hashem doesn't need to want to have meat or anything like that. But there is a divine satisfaction from that. And when it comes to a bird offering, okay, it is also stated, also. So you can look these up in Vayikra if you want as well. Ube mincha, and with a mincha offering, it's also stated, of satisfying aroma. Loymar lecha. We see by a behema, which is a expensive offering, an oaf, which is a more affordable offering, and a mincha, which is the cheapest, most affordable, apparently, offering, right? It says the same thing. Hashem accepts all of them in the same way. What does it teach us? Echad amarbe v'echad amama'it. Right, one who gives more and one who gives less are equally pleasing to Hashem. They're both, Hashem loves both of them. Famous line, right? One gives a lot, one gives a little. The most important thing, that you devote this, right? That your kavana is towards Avinu Shemaim, Hashem in heaven, literally our Father in heaven. Aval kol she'ein lo de parnasaso. Anyone who only has enough for their own sustenance, day-to-day living, or barely. Inu chav liten tzedakah. They don't have to give tzedakah. The parnasas atzmo, because the person's own sustenance, kodemes l'chol adam, is before other people's. So, back to this idea, the cost for these different offerings is wildly different, and yet has the same spiritual impact. Sages say that is a remes that everybody should give according to what they're able to give. We're not judged by the amount in relation to others, but only into our own abilities. And that's, by the way, that's a lesson for everything in Yiddishkeit, right? We're not judged, right? The famous line that Reb Zusha, who's the brother of Reb Elimelech, right? He was an older man. He was concerned. He said, the story goes that he's not worried when he gets to Shemaim that they're going to say, why weren't you like Moshe Rabbeinu? Because I'm not Moshe Rabbeinu. But he's going to say, why weren't you like Reb Zusha? Did you live up to what Reb Zusha was capable of? So in terms of spiritual development or tzedakah or Torah learning, I would suppose all of these things have we're going to approach them similarly. We're not expected to be Moshe Feinstein, but we have to, or for that matter, the person who's giving $5 million to build the yeshiva. But if we can support one shiur, one class, and that's what we can do, so then that's all Hashem is asking of us. Kama nois nilani. How much should you give to a poor person? What is the amount? De machsere, enough that they have what to fulfill their needs. Asher yechsar loy, whatever they lack. And normally we talk about this, that if a person suffered some great loss, but they were used to a certain level of living, the community is supposed to help them live at that level. Whether that halacha, whether that actually lamaisa happens today, I don't know enough. But right, like God forbid somebody suffers a big loss, we can't say, oh well, now you should move into your car. I mean, the person used to live in a house. It has to satisfy their needs. But onish mekabel bechashai, a poor person who receives tzedakah in secret, mechuyev anshe ir liten lo, the people of this community, the city, literally the people of the city are obliged to give it to him. Kol machzoroi, whatever he lacks, kasher hayar ragil, that what they were accustomed to having. Mikodem she'ani, before they became impoverished. Aval ani machziras apsachim, but a poor person who collects openly, door to door, noislim loy, masnas muetes lefi arko, one should give a minimum donation appropriate to his stature. Ulechol afachois, the very least, yitnen lo bechol ir, the habits of every city you give to this poor person, lechem mazon shir shtei sudas, bread and food enough for 2 meals, umamon lalun, and a place to lodge. Now, we mentioned before, and here it is, right? We must sustain and clothe non-Jews as well, im inyei Israel, along with the Jewish poor, mipnei darkei shalom, because of the mitzvah of maintaining peace amongst the nations. Lot to unpack here. So the first case is a person who was doing fine and then suffered a big loss. The community is supposed to, in secret, try to help support them. A person who goes door to door, who is publicly known as a pauper, okay, since his dignity is already been sacrificed, we don't have the obligation to reestablish his dignity. We have obligation to help him, of course. The question about helping the non-Jewish poor with the Jewish poor, we have to give, if you look at that sentence, it almost looks like when you're giving to the Jewish poor, you have to give to the non-Jewish poor. But if you look in the commentaries, even if we're not giving even if the Jewish poor are not seen us in our distribution, we still have the obligation to give to the non-Jewish poor. Others, a minority opinion says, no, when you're distributing charity, you're going to give to everybody, Jew and non-Jew alike. You're not going to discern who is who. We continue a little bit more here. So, and actually, I'll pause here for a moment. The mitzvah of tzedakah is very complicated today because people have seen lots of news about scams, and we get a little bit also, our hearts gets a little bit hardened because we we get a little jaded. And it's so appropriate that we're learning this now because, right, Purim is the holiday of giving tzedakah. And a person needs to just overcome that instinct. And Purim is the one that does it, because anybody who puts their hand out on Purim, you have to give. However, like today, it got sent to me, or yesterday on WhatsApp, there are some people who are collecting in front of the synagogues here in Los Angeles, who we know to be of dubious character. I'll just put it that way. And they bring out their babies in a carriage, and they stand in front, and they dress like some kind of Haredi or Orthodox woman. But I've investigated them insofar as tried to have conversations with them and so forth. And unfortunately, their stories and everything don't line up. And it's not clear where they're from, what the whole story is. So what I say to people is, you don't have to give, but you can just give a quarter. In other words, a person, if somebody puts out their hand, you just give a quarter because of concern of the person's actual neediness. But we need to be generous in tzedakah, and Purim hopefully will help us overcome that internal blockage that we can have. Tzedakah, how much should we give for tzedakah? Number 4, the first year, hamaiser min hakeren. So the first year, explain that what that means. He should give 1/10 of his, which is meiser, of his principal. This is called meiser kasafim. Mikan ve'elech, from there afterwards, yitan meiser min harevach shirviach kol shana. He should give 1/10 of the profit that he's earned each year. Chutz mitzarchei beis. So after subtracting his household expenses from his profit. Zo midus beinonis. This is considered the average level of charity, right? So he gives 1/10 of his profit after subtracting household expenses. And the Igros Moshe explains, and others explain, that this sif applies to a person who has a regular, makes a living, right? This is not the poor person. The poor person who's, has hardship, they only have to give 1/3 of a shekel annually. That's all the tzedakah they have to give. Or 1/9 of an ounce of silver. Not sure how much that is, but that's all that's required of the very poor person, right? So we said before, they have to give. The amount they have to give is very, very little. Although silver does cost a lot more today. The commitment to charity is like a vow. It's like a neder. When a person gives meiser, they should say bli neder. So that should something happen, they haven't transgressed the vow. The Igros Moshe says that profits are not just that which we earned from work, but also profits from investments that have appreciated in value. So while that is an area of a lot of debate in taxes, the Igros Moshe is of the opinion that if a person has a big increase in their investments, when they go to calculate what they're going to give for tzedakah, they need to include that increase in the cost of their investments, in the value, of their investments. Now, as far as subtracting your household expenses, It gets a little complicated, and we could go into this. Household expenses, according to some, cannot be deducted from the profit when calculating the amount of meiser one should give, right? So there's different opinions, right? So one says subtract the household profits. Some say household expensive. Some say don't subtract the household expenses. But even those authorities would agree that you can deduct payroll and income tax and property tax when determining your profit. So even those people who say household expenses don't count to be subtracted from the amount you need to give for you should ideally give for tzedakah, everybody would agree that taxes, property, and federal and state taxes, and all these on your person or on your business can be deducted before ascertaining how much to give. Okay, we're going to pause here. It's getting a little complicated. Stick with us. We're going to learn this, feel better about it. Please God Hashem will bless all of us with the opportunity to give tons of tzedakah. Have a fabulous day.